All right, everybody, welcome back to ID24. My name is Billy Gregory. I am here with my wonderful friend, Leonie Watson.
And it's Inclusive Design 24, which is brought to you by the Perciello Group with help from our friends at Barclays and the Center for Inclusive Design. As always, we've got questions coming in on Twitter, include the hashtag ID24. And we'll be looking out for some really great comments, tweets, questions during the next 50 or so minutes. And at the end of the hour, we'll be giving away another 90-day JAWS license for someone to use. I think that's probably enough of the housekeeping for the moment. So without any further words from myself or Billy, I'm going to hand you over to Stefan. Stefan, take it away.
Thanks. Hey. I'm Stefan, and I will talk about conversions. So let's share my screen. If I hit the button and start the presentation. Cool. Decrease your conversion, common ways to lock people out. Let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Stefan. I'm occasionally running around on the onesie because we do a thing that is called onesie.js. It's a lot of fun. I can highly recommend that. I'm a front-end developer, occasional teacher, and meetup organizer in Berlin. So what we do is we teach CSS for free in Berlin with an initiative that is called CSS Classes, and I'm also organizing the Web Performance Meetup here in Berlin. And my main interest these days is open source, web performance, and web accessibility. And that's why I'm so excited to be here right now. And I work for a company that is called Contentful. So basically, we are a content management infrastructure in the cloud. So if you don't want to host your own CMS and you just want to have a quick API to set up and work with, you can use Contentful, and then editors can use a web app and are not bothering you with any setup or questions. And last thing I want to tell you is that we have Global Diversity CFP Day coming up. We all want to have a more inclusive and more diverse community, and this includes also a diverse speaker lineup. And at February 3rd, we want to provide a warm and inclusive, safe space to help new speakers with their proposals, and also give some advice on how to give good talks. And I'm working in the industry for quite a while already, and when I started, I was in one of these teams, conversion rate optimization. And I worked in e-commerce. So what's the usual conversion rate in e-commerce? The usual conversion rate in e-commerce is 2 to 3% to making an order. And depending on your business, a tiny improvement on this number can mean a gazillion more money for you. Think of Amazon. If they get a little bit better in their conversion rate, they make a ton of more money. But for me, we spent ages on optimizing, and for me, it always felt a little bit like that. What actually leads to a decision when a user uses our products? Is this really the button color? Is it the timing? Is it the mood of the person? Or is it at the end just the weather? And then for e-commerce, this is really true that a lot of things depend on the weather. And I'm making a little bit fun of A/B testing and conversion rate optimization here. Don't get me wrong. It is really important to optimize because we have to understand our users. But at the end, maybe there's more to consider than color, text, and features, because we always have to remember that at the end, we're dealing with people. And people care also about three things. They care about web performance, they care about inclusive design, and they care about accessibility. And these are three topics that are really close to my heart, and I decided to bring them all in one talk. So let's see how this goes. Web performance first. When talking about web performance, what I have to say is that I live in a bubble, and I live in a really healthy bubble. So what you see here is my current phone. It's a Pixel, heavily expensive. I still can't believe that I spent so much money on a phone. And I've got an EU-wide 5 GB fast data plan. And I'm also just in front of my relatively new MacBook Pro. And when I look at this equipment, or when we all look at our equipments, we all have to think, or we all have to remember that we are not the baseline. So when we build stuff for the web, we all should ask ourselves, all right, but where is our next customer coming from? I mean, maybe we're building next Twitter. So what I want to show you are the top 10 countries with the most internet users. It turns out that the most internet users are actually coming from China, followed by India, the USA, Brazil, Indonesia, Japan, Russia, Nigeria, Germany, Mexico. And it turns out that 90% of the people coming from China are using their mobile device. This means that 650 million people are using their mobile device to use the internet. And you know how it is. We don't always have Wi-Fi, right? So when you have a look at how the phone or mobile contracts are out there, you will figure out that people pay different amount of money so people pay differently for data. So what you see here is that, for example, in Finland, you have more or less unlimited data plans for 35 euros, whereas in Germany, where I'm coming from, Berlin, I get in a prepaid plan for 35 euros, roughly around 4 gigabytes of data. This means that people pay different amount of money for the same data. Tim Kudlik from the United States, he grabbed this data and he built a product around that. So what you see here is, what does my site cost? And what this does is that you can enter a URL and the website then will tell you how much it actually costs when a person in a given country visits your site. And it gives you really, really good information like, yeah, this website costs you maybe 10% of the daily income of a user. So this is really, really interesting. And maybe you want to have a look about that. So speaking about data and how expensive it is in different countries, I decided to do a little bit of math here. So I'm living in Berlin, Germany, and I'm a customer of this blue mobile provider. And what I can get from this provider is 1 gigabyte and a prepaid plan for 10 euros. This means that I can visit a website with 2.5 meg 400 times. And I'm ignoring caching headers here on purpose. This means that one visit actually costs me 2 cents, right out of my pocket. So what do we spend our money for these days? 65% of the overall traffic in the internet are images. And what I want to tell you next is Images 101. So currently we have traditional image formats, which is GIF, JPEG, PNGs, and SVGs. And I still see that people are using the wrong formats when building stuff for the web. So let's just do a quick recap here. If it is a vector graphic, please, let's all use an SVG. The SVG support is really, really good these days. Otherwise, go for GIF, PNG, or JPEG. Then, do you need animation? Go maybe for GIF, and we will talk about motion in a second. And then, if you need to preserve fine details, high resolution, or transparency, you should go for a PNG, and there are also some pitfalls. And then you can decide how many colors you want to use. So more than 256, go for PNG 24, otherwise PNG 8. And then we've got the good old JPEG. So I looked around in the internet a little bit, and I found this image. I found this in a blog post. And this image will come over and over again during this talk. And I don't know if it's visible via the Hangout, but actually, I converted it to different image formats. So how much does it actually cost in a given format? So what you see here is GIF, 1.4 meg, 1 cent. PNG 8, almost a cent. And you may see the tiny, tiny differences in the background image because it doesn't look always the same. So PNG 24, all right, 3 cents right out of my pocket. And when we go with the JPEG quality 65, we are at roughly half a cent. Using the correct image format, we can really save money for our users. Additionally, there are also exotic image formats, right? There's also JPEG XR, WebP, JPEG 2000, FLIF, BPG, and unfortunately, I have to say that we are now entering cross-browser land. So JPEG XR is supported in the Microsoft universe, WebP is supported in the Google universe, and JPEG 2000 is supported in the Apple universe. In my opinion, only WebP is kind of entering the web industry these days. So how much does a WebP image cost? 121 kilobyte. That's 1/10 of a cent. This is saving money for our users. So how could we use WebP today? Using maybe the picture element. So what you see here is the picture element. And this works in a nicely progressively enhanced manner. So the browser goes from top to bottom and checks if it understands the given format. So in this example, it will check, okay, do I understand JPEG 2000 or WebP or the PNG? And at the end, if it doesn't understand any of the fancy formats, it will fall back to the image element that is in there. And another option would be to server-side detect if the browser supports WebP images. So there's also the accept header, and then you can just serve different images from the server side. But, well, I feel you. Now you have to do a different format. What I want to tell you next is that, well, maybe JPEG is good enough, because there are also different JPEG encoders. And you can put these into your build process, and then you can save money for your users. So there's libJPEG, mods.jpg, and Goodsly. So let's have a look. This image encoded with libJPEG is 399K. It's half a cent. Going with Goodsly, which is a new encoder by Google, all right, 336. But when you use mods.jpg, you can cut it in half again, which is really, really cool. So if you're interested in more information about image optimization, Una Kravitz gave a really nice talk that is called The Joy of Optimizing at the BTConf last year. So I highly recommend that one. So I had this image, and I actually found this image in this article. It was an article about code published on Medium, and the page rate of this page was on desktop 21 megabytes. Think of that. That is, with my 10 euro data plan, that's 21 cents for visiting a website or to read an article where I'm not sure if I'm actually like it. And funnily enough, it was 30 megabytes on mobile. I didn't debug what was going on there, but this is not how responsive web design should work. So I had a look, and first of all, I found these 4 images. So it was this big Seattle images and 3 images of code, all served as a PNG, which made 3 megabytes, which is 3 cents. And none of them was actually served in the proper size, for example, to mobile devices. And the thing is that we have responsive images today. So we can just use the source set and the sizes attribute to serve proper sized images for responsive web design. And this works without any JavaScript libraries today. And maybe you have even a software as a service or something in place where you just have to append a parameter. And this way, it's really, really easy to serve properly sized images. So what I did, I grabbed the images and I resized them and used the proper format, and I went down to roughly 200K. So I changed it to almost nothing, which I believe is really, really cool. So, but you might ask yourself now, well, Stefan, but you talked about 30 meg. Where's the rest, right? So the rest was this. So what you see here is a 24 megabyte video of code. I'm not really sure how I feel about that, but yeah. Which brings me to the next topic, and the next topic is video. Video is currently only embedded in 7% of all sites in the internet, but if it comes into play, it really, really matters. So the average video response size today is roughly around 500K. And let me tell you a story here. So what you see here is my private website. And what I do is that I try to document things that I learn on the way, and it's called Today I Learned. And I started by making little videos using GIFs, because this is how the internet works, right? GIFs. And at some point, I just switched to MPEG-4, and I saved 10 megabytes for one page of my personal site. This is 10 cents in my private data plan for 10 euros. And the next step then was to properly compress these MPEG-4s. So what I also have in my dot files is this little snippet here, which then compresses MPEG-4 properly to save some bytes on the wire. But maybe MPEG-4 is not even the correct format to serve video today on the web. We also have WebM, sorry. We also have WebM, which is built for the web. So then we could also use the video element, which works pretty well today, and then the browser again goes in a progressive enhanced manner from top to bottom and chooses the format it understands. So looking at one image then, what you see here is a recording of what I don't remember what I learned there. So, but initially recording was 5 meg, which boils down to 5 cents. Then I compressed it properly, so I got down to 1 cent. And after converting it to WebM, I cut it in half again. I again saved money for users that visit my stuff. And then I automated the whole thing just a little bit. So I've got now this prepare video function in my dot files, which automatically compresses MPEG-4 and then converts to WebM. So speaking about video, what I also want to say is, please all let's use video responsibly. So years ago, I was lucky, and I'm not sure how this works over the stream, but I was lucky and I was able to record this little web page test comparison video. And what you see is The Guardian and the New York Times. And on the left side, you see that a video ad is kicking in. I have no idea what Audi paid for that. But on the other hand, I don't want to know how much all the users or visitors of the New York Times paid for seeing this ad they didn't ask for. This is the reason for ad blocking, right? So we talked about images and videos. Last thing I quickly want to cover is, all right, what about text? Front-end 101 today is that we should minify and we should compress all our text files, which means that we should serve them with gzip or something like that. There's also a relatively new compression algorithm out there that is called Brotli. Brotli has a few gotchas. It works on HTTPS only. The encoding is really, really slow, so you have to encode it before and then statically serve them. But as you see, you can save a few bytes on the wire. Big players like Dropbox and Facebook, they're all serving Brotli today. So maybe you want to consider that. I have to say, though, that web performance on its own is a huge, huge topic. So we could talk about fonts, HTTP2, progressive web apps caching, the Rail model, time to interactive speed index, preload 60 frames per second, first render. But I decided to bring more into this talk. So let's see. If you're interested in more information about front-end performance, I'm maintaining for several years already this online resource that is called perfmatters tooling today. And I'm pretty sure you'll find all the information you need there. So when you're not caring about web performance, what you usually do is you lock people out that live in less populated areas. When I'm visiting my parents in 200 kilometers north from Berlin, there's not much there. I can barely use my phone because the connection is not good enough. You're locking people out that are not able to afford expensive plans. And you're locking people out that are maybe in hotel or conference Wi-Fi. When I'm visiting a foreign country, I have to pay €6 for 2 megabytes. We always have to remind ourselves that information shouldn't be a privilege. And I consider myself to be a web professional, and I want to make the internet more affordable and more accessible. So for me, this whole thing makes complete sense. If you want to make a case for web performance and need something like that, Pinterest increased 15% of something due to performance improvement. The BBC loses due to slow load times. And the train line, which is a ticket discounter in the United Kingdom, they make 11 million more per year due to performance improvements. Tim Cudlek and Tammy Everts are maintaining this site, which is called WPO Stats, and they collect exactly this information for you to have an argument to evangelize for web performance. So this is web performance. But maybe let's step back a little bit. In the United States, there are 57 million people with disabilities. The overall population of the United States is 321 million people. And let me tell you something about these people. According to a study, 71% of these people will leave a site when it's difficult to use. These people will drop and will go somewhere else. It doesn't matter if our products that we build are the cheapest ones or they are the best. People will not use our products if they are hard to use. For the United Kingdom only, these people will spend £16 billion per year. Now cut 70%. Is that maybe part of the conversion rate? I don't know. Which brings me to the next topic, which is inclusive design. Inclusive design is a design methodology that enables and draws on the full range of human diversity. And diversity is great, so we should all kind of go for it. And speaking about inclusive design, I want to tell a few stories. A few months ago, I was giving a talk in London, and the sound technician came to me and gave me this audio transmitter, and it has one LED. And what he told me was, well, you can mute that thing, and probably you can see it, but I can't. This is a classical issue, right? 1 of 12 men is affected by a kind of color blindness. For women, it's 1 of 200. So let's have a look at this image here. Looks good to me, I guess. I mean, I'm 32. It could also look like that, or like that. Do you consider color in your products? And I mean, I'm a front-end developer, and we all do fancy single-page software as a service products these days. Do they work without color? Because this graph could also look like that, or like that. So when we're building stuff for the web, we should always check if we don't only convey or transfer information via color. So what I do when I develop stuff, I'm using, for example, a Chrome extension that is called Funkify. And this is really, really cool. So I can quickly just check for different color blindnesses and see if my design still works. Funkify also gives you can also simulate different disabilities, so it is an awesome Chrome extension. Give it a try. Another thing is, so I'm working at my current company for a year now, and before I started here, my new boss was telling me, Stefan, all right, you have to rebuild your site. It looks horrible today. And I was like, okay, I can do that. I mean, I'm a developer, so I asked a friend, hey, can you please give me a design for my new website? And I also use my website to blog on write articles. And I wrote an article about accessibility and what happens when you publish an article about accessibility. Well, the internet tells you that your stuff is not accessible. And Hayden was right in this case. So I had a look again. And what I found out is that the initial design had several flaws. It started with too small font sizes and with too low contrast ratio. And these issues can be detected automatically using tools like, for example, X. X has a CLI tool, which you can then just run against your site. And if not everything is detectable with accessibility tooling, but these could have been covered with a little bit of tooling. And that didn't take care of that. So I had to fix it later. There are several tools out there. So there's Tenon, there's the ICJaker, X, Wave, and this article that is linked in the slide here gives you a really valuable, nice comparison when to use what. And also, Google and Chrome, they start to push accessibility tooling even further. So X is now also included in Lighthouse, which is a tool to evaluate the quality of progressive web apps. But you can always just check, okay, how am I doing on accessibility, and should I fix anything else? And then there are also the accessibility developer tools, which currently are a Chrome extension. They are already in Canary, and soonish we don't have to use that anymore. But you may say, well, maybe this is a little bit too late, because now I, as a developer, discovered that I had accessibility issues on my site. Maybe designers should also take care of that already. So there are also, for example, what you see here is a sketch plugin, and the contrast problems could have easily been discovered by using something like that. So at the end, I fixed all the things, and I have to say, my blog now, or my site now, it's a little bit less pretty to me. But this is completely fine because more people can read my articles. And that's the whole purpose of me writing an article on Sunday afternoon. People rarely drop because of the lack of prettiness. So let me tell you another story from the same event. The speaker after me, she wanted to play some videos with audio, and the setup there was that we had several rooms and we wanted to live stream. So we had to distribute the audio across several things. And the same sound technician was saying like, well, I'm not sure if that's possible. And it was not sure if it could work with the videos. So what I also want to tell you is never rely on sound only. And what you see here is the View Source conference. And I discovered that last year for the first time, they had live captioning. And this is not only for deaf people. Oh, I'm so sorry here. I forgot about that. Shit. Here we go. They had live captioning, and this is not only for deaf people. This is also for me, listening to a speaker that is coming from New Zealand. I've got really hard troubles understanding these people. This can save the experience for a conference talk. And the View Source conference then later, they also published the videos with subtitles. And this is not only for deaf people. This is me when I forgot my headphones, sitting in the public transport, sitting next to a colleague that I don't want to annoy with sound. This is inclusive design. And it's not only about video and audio. Are touch targets big enough? I mean, some people have troubles to find or to hit proper touch targets because, well, it's really hard for them. But it is also myself when I run to catch the public transport and I have to buy my public transport tickets on the go. How often do you hit the wrong button because it's too small? So when you're not thinking about these kind of inclusive design patterns, you're locking people out that cannot turn on sound, that sit in the sunlight, or that cannot pay full attention. And let's maybe all stop doing that. That's the design. No, it's not. The case is that it's a lot of people working together. And designing products is not only about making them pretty. And front-end developers today, we are not only pixel pushers anymore. We are information architects. And there's the Microsoft Design Toolkit. And when you read it, it's all about education, collaboration, and being inclusive. And disabilities are not only... Everybody is disabled at some point. And there is the... you can differentiate between permanent, temporary, and situational. When I broke my right hand, I will figure out that a lot of things are hard to use. So let's just check. When I'm wearing sunglasses, high contrast ratio matters to me. And these are all tiny things that matter for the success of your product. Recently, there was a tweet by Zafia Abdallah, and she asked, if you have a disability, what's the hardest thing about browsing the web? And this tweet had 1,600 retweets, and people answered, it's the lack of captioning, it's color problems, and it's too small touch targets. And the last thing a lot of people mentioned were distracting animations. In the United States, 69 million people have what is called vestibular disorders. These are caused by problems affecting the inner ear and parts of the brain that control balance and spatial orientation. This means, or when you have something like this, motion can trigger sickness. And Apple is doing actually a really good job. So when you look at iOS and macOS, they provide a reduced motion option. And when this is turned on, when you build a website, this is available in your CSS and in JavaScript using Mesh Media. Because we all want to build fancy animations and stuff, but if it makes people sick and uncomfortable, maybe we should give them an option to opt out. And Apple then releases their own website. So what you see here is a really slight movement when you hover over things. When you have reduced motion enabled, it is just gone, which can make a product usable for your users. And also, when Sierra came out, Apple had the landing page that looked like that. And I'm not sure if I have any disabilities in this area, but when I saw this for the first time, it even made me a little bit dizzy. So when you have reduced motion turn on, what they ship is something like that, which is more inclusive and which helps maybe a few users to use your product. At the end, it boils down to the fact that inclusive design is not just for good, it's for good business. Which brings me to the last part, which is technical accessibility. So let's just do a quick recap here. How do you browse the web? And let's have a look again at my private website. So this is my site, and when I'm scanning for information, it's completely visual driven, right? I'm looking for font sizes, bigger text, I'm looking for padding, and this is how I discover things. But there's also assistive technology out there. So there are common screen readers, which is JAWS, NVDA, or VoiceOver. And you might not know, but only 64% of people using a screen reader are actually blind. There are also people with low vision, people that are visually impaired, or just people that like stuff to be read out, to focus on content. So in case you don't know how a screen reader sounds like, let's have a quick look at VoiceOver.
VoiceOver on Chrome. Stefan Judis Web Development. Window. Link. The Web Performance Group. Link. Perf tooling today. Heading level 1. Hey, I'm Stefan. Heading level 2. Log. Heading level 2. Talks. Form. No items. Landmarks menu. List 5 items. Visited. Link. Home. List 5 items. Visited. Link. Home. VoiceOver off.
So what you just heard was, hopefully heard, was that I was navigating using area landmark roles. I was using proper markup, so I was jumping through headlines. So semantic markup is not only for SEO, right? And WebAIM, which stands for Web Accessibility in Mind and is a non-profit organization dealing with web accessibility, they did a check in 2011 and they checked for accessibility errors and they excluded even contrast. And then they did the same check 6 years later. And as you see, we're not doing such a good job today. These errors are all defined in a spec that is called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or short WCAG or WCAG. And let's just have a quick look at several topics included in this spec. So I said, the first thing, semantic markup. So I looked around for 2 minutes, and what I found really quickly was this. This is a Google Map widget. And what you see there is that I can click these buttons and then I can zoom in and zoom out again, but these are not reachable using the keyboard. So I had a look, okay, how is this built? And this is how it's built. Typical div soup without meaning. So how could we fix the whole thing now? So what I did first is I set a tab index -1, which makes it clickable but not focusable by the keyboard. Well, so I went with a 0. This makes it clickable, focusable, and reachable via the keyboard. But now when assistive technology discovers this thing, it doesn't know that we're dealing actually with a button. So let's fix that. Let's put a roll button on it. But now we've got the next problem that keyboard users might expect that they can push that button with the keyboard. So let's throw a little bit of JavaScript on it to get the click or click event. And at the end, it all boils down to the fact that, well, maybe we should just care about semantic markup and just use a button. If you can use the web platform to solve issues, just use it. I mean, you have support for more environments. Browser vendors can optimize. Fewer code is always better code. And I see a lot of people smiling about semantic markup, but it's neither simple nor unimportant. So let's have a look at another topic here, which is Focus handling. Great focus management is essential for a good product. And who doesn't use the keyboard a lot, right? So I found, for example, this site, and it starts in the search book, and I'm tabbing around. Do you see where the focus is right now? I don't. And the reason for that is these 3 lines of CSS. You do find them all over the internet. We shouldn't do that. And I'm doing front-end development for quite a while, and what I always said was never touch the outline. But recently I actually changed my opinion to always think of the outline. And why is that? I was reading an article about accessibility, and there was one comment below that actually caught my attention. One user said that his father had to change browsers because the tiny thin dotted line of Firefox was just not visible for this user. So let's just have a quick look. So what you see here is the focus of different browsers. And you see here, it also highly depends on contexts. Chrome has a blue outline on focus. And funnily enough, in the Chrome docs, you cannot see where the focus is because the background on the docs has the same color as the outline color. But why are people disabling the outline in the first place? The reason for that is this. So what you see here is the focus for different things on click. And this is what visual people hate. This outline of buttons. This is why people put outline 0 on things. But thankfully, there is a solution coming. And I saw Marcy's talk 2 hours ago. She already mentioned that. So let's just have a quick mention here. So what you see here is focus ring, which is defined in the CSS level 4 spec. And with this, we can differentiate between focus that is triggered by the mouse or by a click or by the keyboard. This way, we can get rid of outline 0. Rob Dodson even did a complete episode on that. So if you're interested in that, check that out. And speaking about focus handling, how hard can it be to build an accessible modal? And I will not answer this question right now because I only have 45 minutes. But at the end, it boils down that it's really, really hard. And Rob Dodson, who does a lot of accessibility stuff, he said that building an accessible modal is the boss battle in accessibility. If you're interested in more, the slides include information on how to do that, and you will see a link to that later. Next thing I want to talk about is accessible content. So let's have a look again at our beautiful Seattle image.
Voiceover on Chrome. How I learned to love JavaScript. Window. Link. Image. Go to the profile of John Doe. Link. Follow. Button. Engineer. Drinking too much coffee. APR. 1. Middle dot. 7. Min-read. Heading level 1. How I learned to love JavaScript. /1 star H 1 VH 8 GB 3 I 7 GPH 5 AG 1 HMSQ.png image. When Brendan I pre /1 heading level 1. How I learned to love JavaScript. Your voiceover off.
As you may have noticed, there are 2 problems in this article. And the first one is this. We should never put meaningful content in generated in pseudo classes, right, and before and after. But just because it's CSS, it also doesn't mean that it cannot be detected by assistive technology. So what you see here is this middle dot, which you may have noticed, which comes out of a pseudo element. So we could fix that by just putting an area hidden on it to remove it from the accessibility tree. And the other problem that you may have heard is this one, right? An image without an alt can really mess up the experience for assistive technology. So there are 2 ways to fix that. In this case, Seattle, you may say that it doesn't belong there in the first place, and it is really just a decorative image. If you're dealing with decorative images, you can go with an explicitly set alt, empty alt attribute, or you can put role presentation on it to remove it from the accessibility tree. So with this,
voiceover on Chrome. How I learned to love Java's link. John Doe, follow, engineer, APR, 1, 7, min-read, heading level 1. When Brendan I created heading level 1. How I learned to love JavaScript. Voiceover off.
Look, sounds pretty good to me. Setting an alt attribute on an image is actually not that easy. So, because it highly depends on context. So if you want to know how to write a proper alt attribute, there's this really nice article by WebAIM. So check that out. Another thing I want to show you, and I have no idea how I am on time because I messed up my timer here, but let's see.
Voiceover on Chrome. Stefan Judis. Web development. Window. Link. Check out the project. Heading level. Perf tooling is a shared with link. Perf heading forest is an NPM desktop client to deal with daily work. Check out the project. Check out the project. Check out the project. My latest projects on GitHub. Voiceover off.
How much value does check out the project has in this case? I personally see that check out the project belongs to one of the projects above. But, well, these links all are the same. These are the typical read more to discover things. So what was the markup I had initially? This is what I had initially. And I could fix that by putting an area label on it and give it some more meaning for assistive technology. But now I see already people saying, well, now, Stefan, I have to maintain two things. What you could also do is you could use area labeled by and connect it to the headline. And with something like that, you can increase the usability drastically for assistive technology.
Voiceover. Forest is an NPM. Heading level 3. Forest is an NPM desktop client. Forest on GitHub. Performance tooling today on GitHub. Design mode Chrome extension on GitHub. Link. Voiceover off.
I like that. That's really, really cool because you see something and you hear something else. If you ask yourself what is an accessible name, Leonie wrote a great article about that. So if you are interested, check that out. So what I showed you so far were inconvenient things, but let me just, as the last one, show you something that is a breaker that makes your products unusable for others. So what you see here is contentful.
Voiceover on Chrome. Stefan Judis star. Window. Stefan Judis. Insertion at end of text. Name. Edit text has keyboard focus. You are pizza. A. Unselected. 1 characters. Publish changes. Button. You are currently on a button inside of web content. To click this button, press Control, Option, Space. To exit this web area, press Control, button. Voiceover off.
Did you hear that it successfully published? I didn't. So what was the reason for that? So this little thing that comes down is this. And if we want to tell assistive technology that something happened, we can set a role and an area life attribute. And there are also several levels because maybe you don't want to interrupt the user flow of people using assistive technology. So, and when I set something like that in the web app, the experience actually becomes usable, right? Think of an Ajax add to cart. If people cannot hear when something went into the cart, they will use something else. So with this.
Voiceover on Chrome. Stefan Judis star. Window. Stefan Judis. Insertion at end of text. Name. Edit text has keyboard focus. Pizza. A. 6 characters. Publish changes. Button. Stefan Judis published successfully.
I like that. That's really geeking out on accessibility. So when your markup is in order and you want to go and want to check out what it really means to build inclusive components, Hayden is doing a really, really nice series that is called Inclusive Components. So you can check that out. So when I started digging accessibility, I had the opinion that my friend Carl once, he said that once, that he believes that making things accessible should be required because it's the right thing to do. And that makes total sense for me. But I'm dealing with the front-end world now for 6 or 7 years, and I recently, more or less, I changed my opinion to this one, that it is a big, big misconception that when we build accessible stuff, that we're doing someone a favor. Everybody is looking for front-end developer these days, and we make a good living. We are not doing favors. We're doing our job, and I think this is the correct approach. And I'm not alone. In the United States alone, there have been 240 lawsuits against retail, financial service, and hospitality in 2016. All sides of the EU government have to have the WCAG standard AA. Norway enforces new sites to follow an accessibility standard. Austria enforces AA for e-commerce since December 2016. Enforced accessibility standards are on their way. If you ask yourself how to meet these standards, there's this document that is called How to Meet WCAG 2.0. So at the end, and to close the whole thing, I talked about conversion, right? But at the end, it is not about conversion. When we are building stuff for the web, it's about being affordable, being inclusive, and being accessible. Because at the end, it's all about people. And I want to build the best products possible. And I want it to be used by as many people as possible. And to achieve that, I have to think about people. And at the end, a more inclusive product will be more successful. And we all have to remember and think of the people out there. For some people, an accessible internet literally makes a world of difference. And I have no idea how I'm on time, but that's it.
Wow, that was awesome, Stefan. That was easily
Truly.
one of my more favorite talks of the day. Even Henry Helvetica came out of nowhere to talk about it. So there we go.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you talked about performance and bandwidth costs as a metric for inclusive design. I think that's an angle we don't often give enough thought to. So it was really good to hear it in your talk.
Thanks.
Thank you. We did have a question for you. Let's see. Derek Jackson asked, what is your suggestion for extended descriptions of complex images, for example, images of a table? Would you suggest providing a short alt text and a link to an extended description, or something else?
I have to say I would have to read that up. Do you have an idea?
I think there's a number of ways you can handle it. I'm guessing if you're talking about an image or an SVG chart or something like that, where it's more data visualization. One technique I've come across that I really quite like is to make the data both available, in a image format, but also just in sort of plain text tabular format. Not just as a point of accessibility, but just a usability as much as anything else. I know some people process graphics and images really easily, other people not so much, and so a kind of text-based description, can be quite beneficial. So using a tabbed interface maybe, so that people can choose between the two different views, or an accordion, so you can view the graphics, view the text description, I think is one possible technique. But yeah, definitely something worth doing, I think. Billy, I don't know if you've got any.
No, I think you touched on that perfectly. That was great. Yeah, I mean, I didn't see a lot of questions come through, but what I did see from this talk was you are probably one of the more quotable speakers we've had in the last 23 hours or so, because I've seen more people quoting you in the last 40 minutes than I have for all of the other talks probably combined. So if there was a crown or some kind of prize for that, you would have won it for sure. It was a fantastic talk. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Lots of really great, bite-sized pieces of information, which is absolutely perfect for takeaways for something like this.
Yeah.
Billy, do we have a winner of our 90-day JAWS license for the hour?
Well, I mean, if we have to go by just sheer quantities of tweets, I would have to pick Deborah Edwards Onoro. Sorry, my voice is dying on here. At Red Crew. She has been fantastic over the last hour. I don't know how she had time to listen to the talk, because it seems like she's just tweeting everything, which is great. So yeah, I would say Deborah is my clear pick for the winner for this hour, for sure.
Absolutely, but I'm going to pull a bit of a sneaky one, because Joe O'Connor won one of the licenses in the early hours of ID24, and he very kindly asked us to send it on to somebody else who could probably make more use of it than he was likely to. So I'm going to suggest that we send one to Derek Jackson for his question as well, because I thought that was a really good question to
Look at
ask.
us, we're making it rain up in here with Jaws. It's like Sharknado.
So Deborah and Derek, if you are listening, drop us a DM with an email address or some contact information, and we'll make sure those licenses get their way to your inboxes as soon as we've caught up on some sleep.
Awesome. Okay, I guess that's it for this presentation. Just a quick reminder that ID24 is brought to you by the Paciello Group with kind support from Barclays and the Center for Inclusive Design. You can find more about both of our supporters on our website. And if you did like this session, and if you didn't, I do not know what's wrong with you. If you like this session, please hit that button and subscribe to ID24 so we can stay in touch with you. On that note, Stefan, once again, thank you. And we'll see everybody else at the...
It was a lot of fun.
It was indeed. We'll see everybody else at the top of the hour.
So what?